have, is anyone remote, is there anyone remote to Janice to be approved? Is
No,
there
sir,
one?
we
No
don't have
virtual.
any members
No virtual.
participating remotely.
No, okay, so that's not necessary. We'll dispense with defer the administrative items and approval of the minutes. And by the way, I was informed by the attorney last time, we could have approved the minutes, even though the people weren't here from the prior meeting because of the transition. So the attorney informed me privately, well, we could do it still, but nevertheless, let's take a look at item 3. Let's look at, Mr. Dornett, let's look at the financial statements on page, starting on page 9. What do we have, sir?
Let's refer to the hard copy that was available to you
Okay,
here.
page 9,
There was one change that occurred since the
printing.
sending out of these statements, but we'll start with page 9, the balance sheet.
Okay,
And consistent with our previous report as of December 31st, the balance sheet as of February 29th is still looking strong. Still shows a positive cash position
okay,
where we are also turning over our accounts receivable, turning that into cash. And so, and then the fund balance near the bottom of the report. We're still showing a fund balance that is above $1 million,
okay,
which is our current target balance.
yes,
So nothing significant has changed in these last 2 months. So if we turn over to page 10
okay,
for the profit and loss statement. So it's July through 2024. And get into the bottom line, we are still showing a net loss for the 8 months of 93,000. And as you look at the budget comparisons, a significant part of that is the fact that revenues are behind what our budget had predicted. Specifically, federal funding is at 58% rather than at 66.7%. And that being due to the significant transitions that we've had in this year with the staffing up of the CBTA that affected us both in, the person that transitioned away from our staff, but also in the level of services that we have since provided to the CBTA.
okay. You mentioned federal funding. So federal funding is below expectations at this point, item.
Through 8 months,
4,100 below expectations. Through how many months? 8, you said?
8 months.
8 months below expectation. It's showing 58%, you're saying it should be 66?
If it was tracking evenly with the budget, it would be about 66%.
66% with the budget, okay. So 58 is 2, that's 8, roughly 8%. Okay, all right. Below, all right. And then also you said CVTA in here as well.
Right, that would be under, well, you can't see it on the summary statement because it's blended with a couple of other sources.
Okay,
But that would be in local funding,
4,300.
the 4,300s.
Mr. Chairman,
If you turn
yeah,
up,
please, yeah,
Thank you.
local funding, yeah.
so I do have a question.
Yeah, I see it there, CVTA, I can see it. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
in 4,300, there was some discussion about, local membership dues and some were lagging, some phone calls were made, and the guy that worked there, but one of the, and I can't remember what commission member it was, brought that up, but what are local memberships, 43 something, 4310?
It's 43.
Alright, so I'm looking at 4,300. And I guess my question is, so we've got, 4315 is gonna be CBTA reimbursement, we're like 134%, so that'll change next year. What about 4310? Are we gonna be able to move that number to 66%? I know there was some discussion folks still owe their dues? I hate
For
to-
fiscal
Oh,
'24, everyone has paid.
Everyone, yeah.
It's just how he receipts that revenue, so
Okay,
everyone's
so-
paid, but
So
we.
everyone has paid, but I recognize the revenue
You
evenly
recognize
throughout.
revenue, so that should match with,
the year.
with the year lapse, right? Okay, so we're 100% there. Alright. The 4315,
Mm-hmm.
is that going to be, because Chairman had brought up CBTA, is that gonna be, different next year substantially?
We're still working through that budget,
You know what, man?
right?
Yeah, okay, alright.
But seems so that you brought up 4315 on the detail statement, page 11. You see that it's currently at 134% of
Yeah, you're right.
the budget.
Yeah, 4315.
That is because of, there are two factors that factor into that amount.
Okay.
There has been a significant increase over expectation as to the operating expenses that are being processed by PlanRVA on behalf of CVTA.
Okay.
And so those extra operating expenses are reflected in this revenue number, because we treat it as a revenue and as an expense for
expense, okay.
budgeted purposes right now.
Okay, I see.
But where the effect on the PlanRVA budget is more significantly is that the professional services provided by PlanRVA to the
To the
CVTA,
CTA, okay. That makes
has
sense.
been adjusted because of,
Okay.
the CVTA's staffing.
Yeah, okay, so the extra expenses come from their staffing. Now, they are working also with a consultant, doing some bonding possibilities, I understand.
Right,
I've
so
heard about
those-
that may be an additional cost. Did they budget for that cost, or? But I guess that doesn't matter whether they budget or not, because we're just concerned with what they owe us.
Right. And
So-
we process those expenses.
Okay.
And so we show revenue for the reimbursement of that expense, but we also have an increased expense for that.
What's the primary, is it in personnel, or what's their primary reason?
The increase
that
is based
expense.
on their consultants.
Consultants, that's why I'm driving at, okay.
Yeah.
They're consultants.
So I just, what I had said before was, the two drivers of our revenue not coming up to expectation. One of them was the CVTA, but it's offset by the expenses from that 4315 standpoint. But what it doesn't do is, with the professional services, we're reimbursed for our indirect expenses that are associated with that as well.
Don't we believe some of those will continue just because of their staffing levels and the ability for us to provide those professional services in a more efficient way? And I think a more competent way than some of that being outsourced, it just works.
Yeah,
Right? I know that's not a financial term, but it just works.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a synergy
Right,
where
Yeah.
the client relationship.
correct.
Yeah.
So would the expectation be that the professional services, that's gonna continue? I don't know that we go to 520, because that's about what we were at this year, but I mean,
Yeah, I think the expectation for professional services provided to the CVTA will be less than what it has been in the past, probably more closely reflecting this fiscal year,
the 385,
just because of, the staffing that
is
they
that
have
the
now.
385 number?
You can't really see it in these numbers because it's blended with the other elements, but
Yeah, it's kind of like almost an agency building, really, if you will, because it's not outside consultant, it's,
Right.
we're internal. So it's kind of like a parent subsidiary where we are feeding up to one another.
There's that relationship.
That
works
relationship.
For both organizations
It does,
very well.
yeah, smart, it's
And
a smart
that may be
relationship.
something that
Yeah.
CVTA, not only is recognized, but we've got some new
They
folks, or
enjoy.
maybe some of the leadership
Yeah.
would recognize that would be something beneficial going forward to
No doubt,
continue.
no doubt, I
Okay.
agree, Mr. Davis, I agree,
I
yeah.
would say that there will be
What do you think?
probably an alternating year, kind of ebb and flow because of the funding rounds.
I know where you're going, yep.
So there will be peaks of higher levels of support necessary when we're going through project prioritization and project selection for the CVTA funding, just as there is with Smart Scale and, the other fund application. So I think, I agree with Dan that I think that this year is a good benchmark for what can be, but I think that there could be some spikes depending on where we are in the funding cycle year to year.
Good. Okay.
And the other thing I would add is that, as you all know, because last month you approved the two new transportation planning positions, but our capacity to serve CVTA was lower this year because we were down personnel. So there's also the reality of we can only do what we can do, and if we have the staff capacity, there could be the potential for more to be done, but that's the nature of the reservation of time that we negotiate each fiscal year.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So, let's do that. So anyway, so we're troubled by the revenues, and of course, the question then becomes, why don't you go ahead and so we can start looking at what is the alternate strategies we should contemplate.
And then the other thing I wanted to highlight on page 10 in the summary
Is what?
is if you look down in the indirect cost pool, the 7,000 series,
Yes.
you'll see that most of them are less than what we had budgeted. Most significantly staff development, which is one of our most significant discretionary pools of expenditures, including travel, training, special events, certain things like that. So we've been, adjusting to our revenue
I got you. Okay.
profile
Yeah.
through that expense area.
Yeah, that's item 7,400.
That is correct.
That's specifically what we're looking at here, Chain. We're looking at stat development, which is budgeted at, and that's good, it's budgeted at that amount. I can see expenditures is way less than a third of that, way less, 4 versus 180. So, you're right, that's been an area, that's a good strategy. Hopefully we're not impaired from a development standpoint, Martha, in that regard.
I don't think so.
I think we're okay.
We were
Can weather that storm.
assertive, thinking about, will fiscal 2024 be the year that's the back to normal after COVID?
Gotcha, yeah.
So as you know, the last couple of years, we were way down on, there was no travel, there was no, activities like that. I think, but there's also a corollary between fewer number of people on staff, there's not as much training opportunity. So I think, I don't feel like our staff have been curtailed in their opportunities for development.
Okay.
We're just enjoying the intentionality that we have in deciding, what things are important this year.
Okay, gotcha, yeah, I get it. So anyway, from a revenue perspective, anything, so I see the cost adjustment there referenced, doing that. So anything else relative to expenses, we're looking at what general operations, we're there, we're under budget, which is good, okay, which is great. And other expenses, we are pretty much
I think,
pretty much under budget as well, which is good in those areas, personnel and the direct costs.
I think
Go ahead.
page 17 of the packet
17,
is,
okay.
in my opinion, particularly helpful.
Okay.
That's the start of the detail by month.
Okay.
So then if you start there, but then turn the page to page 19
Okay,
to the bottom line,
all right,
well, or actually, I guess page 20 to the bottom line, you can see that we've had an uptick in the net operating income for
okay.
January and February, which, as Dan and I were talking yesterday, this is where we start to see the progress made.
Okay, yeah.
So while we have not achieved the net zero, so to speak, between revenue and expenses, we're making contributions in January, February to that deficit. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself and Dan, but when we get to the agenda item on the revised budget for the remainder of the year, I believe that we'll see in March continued progress and then all
Okay.
the way through the end of the year because
Okay.
of the staffing assignments and the other expenditure curbing that we've programmed into the remainder of the
Good,
year.
good. That's good to see.
So I think our hope was to show optimism through 2/28, but with recognition that really probably the majority of the progress you're gonna start to see in March.
Okay, so we should see good numbers in March, hopefully through June.
And historically, January, February, March has been the most
Most
profitable
challenging, yeah.
for the organization. So we're seeing that, but as Martha had indicated, we're also seeing the fruits of the adjustments that we've made.
Okay, that's good.
And so we'll discuss those changes a little bit more when we get into
Okay.
the actual budget
Okay,
revision.
okay. Do we anticipate any costs relative to, being off, taking off, I know historically, we've always been concerned about, staff taking off and having to deal with that.
We've allowed for all
We'll-
forms of
we'll
our
cover
pay time off, the holidays,
time off,
sick
okay.
leave, vacation leave. We actually budget for, as if everyone would take their annual allotment of those leaves.
Okay,
So that's most likely a somewhat conservative approach, but it's the most
Okay.
reliable approach.
okay,
And so that is part of our projections.
okay, so we've considered that, so that's not a surprise.
That is correct.
For us, good, that's good to know. Okay, you had gone at where you were, as you were, I thought we had jumped ahead, but we don't want to truncate your comments. Other comments that you might have relative to expenses or anything relative to revenue. I know what we talked about the last time, we discussed the 3 or 4 items in revenue that you mentioned.
Yeah,
that
Martha
were
had
with plan and versus coming.
brought us forward to the monthly statement, which
Yeah,
begins on page 16.
okay,
And there you can see, especially under the federal revenue, the
Okay.
trend of January, February versus, the immediate preceding months is
Okay.
definitely in a higher upswing. The 402,000 that you see there is artificially more than that due to an adjustment in revenue that was recorded just into that month that reaches
Okay.
back to prior months, but still in general, you're seeing a nice strong upswing
okay.
in those
That's
revenues.
significant. That's significant. Biggest 160 there from pass-through, MPO pass-through here. I see.
Right.
It looks like MPO
And
pass-through,
that's-
yeah.
That's mainly a function of when we pay certain vendors. So
Okay.
really, if you're looking at 4101, 4102, but then what is very significant is 4119, right in the middle, is the EPA grant, which has gone into full swing.
Okay, I got you. I'm still getting used to your numbers.
Yeah.
That you got here, 24,002, 001, I got you. I'm getting used to it.
Yeah, all those account numbers.
The way you're presenting the numbers there. I got you. 02, February. I'm on board. All right, I'm on board with you, Dan. All right, so anyway, so the revenues are looking pretty strong when you look at 58 versus what we said, 66%. 58 versus 66, we're looking not too bad in that regard.
That's correct.
And we expect to continue the revenue. Do we expect any major shifts in revenue, negative or positively?
We'll discuss that when we get to the budget revision.
Okay, yeah, question would be, all right, good deal. Anything else you want to work on?
And then just to reemphasize what Martha brought us to on page 20,
Page 20, okay.
is that we do have, 2 months of surplus,
Yes,
whereas prior to that, 4 of the 6 months had been, deficits.
yeah. You're right.
There were 2 significant adjustments historically. One was due to our indirect rate. We received our approved rate after review by VDOT, and it came in lower than what we had been using due to an audit adjustment.
Lower rate, okay.
Which was approved, and agreed upon by us.
Okay, so you're okay, what's the deviation rate?
It went from 49.78% to 46.75.
From 49 to 41.
But it was one particular expenditure that was in question as to whether or not it was truly eligible.
Okay,
And it was one of those expenditures that, you know, maybe there was an argument to put it in, but it was, you know, not a strong argument. So we decided to agree with the adjustment and move forward that way.
okay,
So that there, you know, wouldn't be any question.
okay. And again, that rate, what would it drop to? 40, what, 46?
From 49% to 46.
46, okay, about 3% drop.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was trying to ascertain.
And then the second adjustment had to do, which is why we're using the paper report,
Okay.
with wage differences that were not factored into our revenue accruals. So decided to actually put those revenues into this period. So that going forward, it'll be, you know, it won't reflect any of those past adjustments, so. But either way, you know, the trend is going the correct way,
Okay,
reflecting, you know, January and February that we have.
yeah, it was a tough, month there, November. It was our toughest month for us.
And
November.
that often is due to the holidays and other
Yeah.
vacation.
That's right.
In January and February, you know, staff returns and we have
Everybody's
some of the
back to
most
work.
availability for work
Okay,
than we do all year. March is expected to be the same.
okay. Right,
So,
good, that's good news.
so we're still, you know, not out of the woods. We still are showing that deficit, but we are showing positive results. And when we, you know, move into the revised budget, we can show you kind of how we expect that to continue.
Okay, that's good. Let's discuss that. And then what the impact will be on us, fund balance wise as well. Want to look at that too.
If I may.
Please,
the-
yeah, just talk, yeah.
The commission, the full board, is accustomed to seeing the quarterly financial statements. But we've pledged that, given the performance through 12/31, we would provide the financial statements on a monthly basis to the finance committee, so that we can stay on top of this and make sure there's transparent communication. My thought is that we can give an update as to our progress at the April 11th commission meeting, but that will be too soon to provide the March 31 financial statements.
That's fine, yeah, you don't have to provide it that soon. You don't need, I don't think you need to provide it if it's April 11th and you haven't even closed the books. What's the average time to close the books anyway? How long would it take for us to?
We're targeting right now 5 business days, so we
5
would
business
have
days. Be too soon?
we'd have a preliminary close by then,
Yeah,
but
preliminary.
we wouldn't
should-
have been able to present it to the finance committee.
Yeah, okay.
Or, you know, much of the other, you know, review that we subjected to before
Yeah,
we present to.
So, Mr. Holland, we thought we could give you an informal view of that preliminary close,
Okay, I would like that. Yeah,
so that
that'd be
when
good.
you are presenting the finance committee report on April 11th, you have as updated information as we can possibly give you. But our thought was not to try to present information prematurely.
Until we are sure
Until the
about it.
close is
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. I don't
Okay.
think it's wise to present until we've verified and reviewed and complete, okay. But yeah, that's fine, because, you know, as we get tenuously close toward our fund balance, amount, that's something we gotta look very closely at. And make sure we're on target and that we can achieve the results. Very important, okay? Yeah. All right, I agree with that. So no, I wouldn't present anything until we're ready to present it. I'd rather not have to come back with, well, we found and corrected or whatever. I'd rather not do that. At this juncture, it's too close of a time span as well. Few days.
So we'll provide that preliminary report to you,
Okay,
so that when you are presenting to the full commission on the 11th, you have
I'll
that
reference it,
information.
yeah.
And then as soon as the final
Yeah.
close is done,
Yeah.
we'll distribute the March 31 statements to the entire committee.
okay, Okay.
And then I think when we move into the budget, the proposed budget amendment, my hope is that we're gonna provide you all some comfort today that we're gonna be on track by
We
the end of
gone,
the year.
okay, yep. Yeah, I like that word you're saying there, comfort. Thank you. Provided some comfort. I like to hear that. All right, well, that's a good deal. Anything else relative to that, the year-end financials or through February? Anything else of significance?
Nothing else I had to
Okay,
emphasize
all
at
right,
this point.
all right. No problem, that's good. All right then, that's good. What's next? Budget amendments, which I think you said you want to get to.
Yes.
What's your recommendations?
So on page 21, you'll see the
Okay.
the summary budget, it's just all on one page.
Mm-hmm.
And this represents by line of business, the proposed budget, revenues and expenses and the indirect cost pool. Over on the far right, the three far right columns, the first of those three is the version 1 that was approved. So that's the comparison to the column just to the left of that. So you can see
I got you.
the bottom line there.
Good.
We're not proposing the net income to be that far off of the previously approved budget. But you can see within the primary categories where those adjustments are being made. So we are recognizing a projected reduction in overall revenues. Down just 1.1%, a $58,000
I see.
change. But the distribution there is shown according to the different sources of income.
1%, it's not too bad. 1% is not bad.
That's really achieved by the shifts in staffing assignments. So we have redeployed staff to move away from projects that do not have a revenue source attached to them and have assigned them into the programs where we have not only work to do, but revenue to support that work.
Okay.
So that's how that works essentially from a time allocation perspective. And then we had 2 new employees that were approved at the February commission meeting for adding to our staff. And those 2 folks, one has already started work this month in March, and the second starts on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see the benefit of the first position that started toward the end of the month of March, and then the second position, we'll start to see that billing kind of pick up in April. Both of those positions are fully funded through our transportation program, so that helps quite a bit.
Great.
And then Dan alluded to this in the review of the February financial statements, but you can see in that indirect cost pool, well, in indirect expenses and then the indirect cost pool, you're seeing significant reductions in proposed spending for the fiscal year. And so that is what really helps us to achieve roughly the same projection for year end.
Yeah,
By
okay.
making those adjustments. And
Okay,
he and I went line by line through the expense categories, both direct and indirect expenses. And we took a look at our year-to-date expenditures and feel pretty confident that we will be very well comfortable living within these adjusted means through the remainder of the year. I think those were the highlight points I wanted to share, and then Dan was gonna get into the detail on the next pages of the budget.
okay.
And so if you turn the page to page 22. The first block are the federal revenues. And if you remember during the presentation of the financial statements, that, especially that first line, 4101, we were behind budget significantly as of February 29. We are now projecting that by June 30th, we'll actually restore those revenues to a level that we had anticipated coming into the year. And as Martha had indicated, you know, the way we're doing that is we are reorienting staff from what was projected going into the fiscal year to what we know we have right now
Good,
to end the fiscal year.
okay, that's good.
And so that shift is going into the TPO type revenues to make sure that we are completing the work that is scheduled for them. You know, that's being accomplished through, you know, 2 means, one of which is what Martha had indicated with the 2 new employees who are there to, you know, build out the work of the TPO. So that'll be a strong, fourth quarter billing adjustment. And then another element that is helping with the turnaround is, with going into the year, we had a transportation director, and then he had, subordinates. With his transition to CBTA, we strategically realigned all of planning leadership. And so we had 3 people who assumed new duties above what they previously had. And so they received compensation adjustments to reflect those new duties. And those were effective on January 1. And so those increases will also impact the revenues. So in essence, by doing so, we are replacing the transportation director revenue with, a new but reconfigured delivery of those services through, a different style of planning leadership. But with that, you have, more hours now being applied to that program and therefore producing the revenue. The other element is, again, in the middle of the column of that group, you have 4119, the EPA grant, our climate pollution reduction grant project, which is very significantly above our estimate for this fiscal year.
Okay,
You
you're
see
right.
the 62,000.
Yeah, 100,000 above, yeah.
That 62,000 was a very conservative estimate going into the year.
Okay.
As we're applying for the grant
That's good.
and securing it. Now that we have the grant, we're able to accomplish the first year objectives of that grant by this past month.
Good.
And so we're starting into the second year of that
That's great.
grant. And so that's where, $100,000 of additional revenue
Yeah,
based on plan
that's good.
is occurring. And so all in all, for the federal revenue group, we're actually projecting an increase of 145,000.
Okay, I see. Great.
Now, as you look down the page, private revenue is projected to be down 200,000. The reason for this is that we had, plans to secure new business and therefore new revenue. Given the change in staffing and the strategic realignment we had to do in order to accommodate those changes. Some of those new initiatives, did not take hold. But the response to that was to, realign the staff time that we had allotted for those initiatives back to our existing programs. That is that, the additional work for the CPRG grant program and to restore services to the TPO.
Okay, great.
So that's kind of how that revenue swap worked. Is basically, we reassign people, as Martha had indicated, to activities that do have an existing revenue source.
Yeah, you really have to. Yeah, really got to do that. Okay, that's good.
So those are the highlights of the detail in the revenue.
Okay, I got you. Otherwise, no major, don't see major deviations along here in that regard. On the, you just explained it, I guess, on the private funding, which had dropped, 24% on private funding in the total category. It dropped from 819, if I can read it correct, to 618, I believe.
Yes.
Drop of almost $200,000. That's a $200,000 you were just alluding to in terms of,
That's correct.
the change in what expected revenue, as it were. Okay, very good, all right.
And so if you turn the page
All
to
right,
page 23,
yes.
in the middle of that page, you see total revenue. And the actual change is a reduction of 58,000,
58,000.
which is 1%.
That's that 1% we were talking about, and revenue drop, okay, not too
Okay.
bad. 1% is not bad, we can live with 1%.
Right. So the planning changes that we've executed in the last couple of months to reflect kind of the new situation in
That's
fiscal
good.
2024
That's good scratching.
is actually, we're expecting it to turn around revenues
Okay,
over these next few months.
okay, that's good, and we can see an upswing for that, okay,
And
that's
then
good.
in expenses, salaries and wages, you see a decrease of a
Yeah.
few percentage points.
Yeah, I do.
And, kind of what you don't see there is kind of how that is comprised. What we've had, as I indicated earlier, the change in the planning programs, leadership, the addition of new staff, all of those changes combined are restoring kind of our professional base and service hours. And so even though we had vacancies throughout the year, we are filling them and we're getting people in place in order to, continue the services
Okay.
that we need to do. So,
Okay, good, that's good. That's a good scratch. I didn't, can't think of, are there any others that you think of that as we end out this year that we should look at? I think that's a good strategy that you've employed there to cover where you are. And you have, and that's why you have to be flexible. And I often say that when you're doing budgets, when you're doing projections, you have to be flexible. Sometimes the future doesn't always present itself as you envision. When you envision the future, things change. And you had to pivot, and as you've done here, which is good. You have to pivot. Now, so from a revenue perspective, 1% is not a bad drop, as we talked about overall. It's not bad. Then the question becomes on the expense side, where are there any opportunities relative to expense that we might consider as we end the year?
Yeah, there are a number of them. I'm on the top of page 24.
Okay, top of 24, okay, good.
So the one thing where expenses actually increased is in our direct cost pool.
Okay,
These are the expenses that we charge directly to grants. And so we actually are reimbursed, at least on some percentage of these expenses.
okay,
And so that increased 46,000 with the room and the grants. We were able to, properly allocate certain expenses into those grants. Some of it is represented by increased activity and pass-through, such as the CVTA. So that's why that increased. But as you go down the different indirect cost pool groups, professional fees is a reduction of 20,000. That is primarily due to foregoing an initiative that we had planned to do regarding promotion advertising. And so we, delayed that initiative until we have, the revenue base to support it.
okay.
General operations,
You delayed what initiative? I'm sorry, repeat that, I missed it. I lost my thought for a moment.
it's the
Which one?
reduction of 15,000 in the advertising.
Oh, in advertising, good. Okay, yeah, I got you.
So there was some promotional activity that
That we decided to delay, defer, okay. All right, I got you. Proposed
and again,
version.
given the individuals hired into communication position, we were able to refocus through that individual some of the work that we were planning to do.
Okay, I'm on advertising, that's 6150. I don't see, I see the version one.
But there's a 7150 in the group right below it.
Oh, the one below, 7150. Oh, right, oh, down here in there, right, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I was looking up in the next category. Advertise, I see what you're saying, I'm with you now. I was in the wrong category, 15, okay, good, so that's the deferral. Does that hurt us, does that impair us in terms of our mission significantly? Martha, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think
Can we live with that?
yes, we're not purchasing more giveaway items for the special events that we do.
Okay.
We've reduced the scope of the support services we have from our vendors in our on-call
Okay,
public engagement and communications.
okay. All right,
But I think since Holly has joined the team, she and Gilbert have done a really good job, as Dan said, of being able to pull some of that activity into the agency. And they've been able to carry a lot of that, so that the core work is still getting done.
okay, that's good. All right, thank you for that. That's a good adjustment. That's a good one.
Okay, and then in 7200, the bottom group on that page,
Okay,
a net reduction of $6,000. That's just, reflecting changes that we've seen in operating levels in these different areas. Some of the miscellaneous were items that were available to some of our program leads that we didn't need to dip into. So, we were able to reduce that from a plan perspective. And just, little things like supplies. We did increase, the rent category a little bit for some parking and some, facilities maintenance work. So that was the main, driver there.
Okay. And I
And
see
then-
it, go ahead, and I see print, it's not like it used to be, I remember 50,000
Oh, yeah.
in print, remember that? When we had that, I always wondered why that budget was so huge, and I felt that was an area of opportunity. So now, to back down to what, 18 from what it used to be, that's a win, big win for us,
Absolutely.
big win for printing, that's good. All right, thank you, so we got to drop there, that's good,
And then turning the page,
yes, sir,
technology operations,
okay,
basically we just redistributed amongst the different expense categories. As we saw the patterns. And then, as indicated previously, staff development
okay,
is the one area where, and just to reemphasize part of what Martha had said, it's not that we're foregoing staff development. We have reduced some of our plans,
Okay.
but some of the staff development is actually what we're putting into direct expenses, directly into the grants.
okay, good,
So we're getting reimbursed for those.
that's great,
And so it's just changing the composition of how we're funding those.
okay, good, good.
But the biggest things are, reductions in, plans regarding organizational duties, travel and training.
Okay,
Just maybe being a little bit slower on our participation in some of those opportunities than what we had planned to do.
okay, all right,
And then each of these other areas are just minor adjustments.
yeah.
To bring us more in
Number
line
two.
with,
Yeah,
what we're able to do
okay,
in this fiscal year, but also, the trend of what we were doing,
okay,
throughout the year.
okay, good,
And so that's where we're able to, take a lot of the discretionary expenditures, off the board that were being put by the organization at large,
okay,
which is helping us to offset those other,
Yeah.
revenue
yeah, we can always bring them back later as needed,
elements.
as we're available to, you're right.
And that's kind of the strategy of, being flexible and
Excuse me,
agile in our planning.
okay,
Some organizations, that discretionary line gets spent right away because nobody wants it taken away from them.
yeah,
But as we monitor and plan throughout the year, we keep an eye on those things.
okay.
And so the net result is, I guess I did have transfer that on the next page. An increase in our net operating loss before transfers. If you turn the page to.
Okay. In terms of technology, and this software, I know we contemplated, counting software one time. I don't know where we are with that, Martha and Dan, where we with software. I know we had contemplated deferring it until we were able to.
That's part of the fiscal 25 plan.
That's the 25, good, that's right. All right, good deal, okay, now you said turn the page. All
Turn the
right,
page.
That's good, okay,
So page 26.
okay, got you.
And that top section are basically all the transfers between activities. This helps, us see and plan kind of which activities,
Okay,
what type of funding is required
I
from,
got you.
PlanRVA
Yeah, I got you.
general.
Okay,
And, most of our groups require some level of funding. But kind of our emerging groups, community engagement, community development, data research and analysis, require a little bit more than the others, than the more fully mature ones. Transportation actually is absorbing certain activities from other groups
yes, I
where the
see.
work is recorded in the other lines, but it's still eligible under the TPO because
Good.
it's part of the UPWP.
That's good.
It's how we're organizing the cost tracking for those groups. And then the CVTA is the one that actually contributes to PlanRVA in general through the service fee.
That's right.
So that's how we come down to where we are.
Okay, now.
We were able to
Good.
keep our allotment for computer equipment,
Okay, good, okay,
but that has not been expended as of yet.
all right.
We're looking at the fourth quarter just to make sure that,
Yeah,
our projections are coming to fruition.
that's a good idea, defer until you know where you are, good idea.
would then, the idea is to look at those capital items as maybe more so reserves so that we can, fund them as we have funding, not have to quick spend whenever we think we have some surplus, but actually be able to plan and accumulate fundings for those activities.
Okay,
And so we know that we have some technology needs in the
Yeah.
short term, but we also want to build towards some of these other initiatives.
we want to schedule it and want to phase it.
Right.
We want to be phasing and scheduling. Okay, that's great. Now, one question to think about. I know years ago we discussed when we were doing work for the CVTA, the percentage we were going to charge. I said, make sure we're not breaking even, that we at least 15 or 10% above our costs. I remember that. We have increased activity. We ought to have increased revenue from the CVTA, increased work we're doing for them, which is good that we're able to do it. Are we gonna get, making sure that we continue to get back more than we don't wanna break even, we wanna be above,
Right.
way above the water, so to speak, or the base, and get back the revenue we need from them, given the increased work, because they're gonna be doing more and more work, especially as they do the refunding plan, the bond funding plan, rather. So there'll be a lot more work regarding that, and then plans to, I guess, distribute that to the respective jurisdictions primarily. I know we're talking about $300 million in Chesterfield
Yeah.
that we're looking at getting, as y'all probably know. So that's a lot of money coming back. But I just want to make sure that we're not undercutting ourselves or not receiving the appropriate revenue, if you know what I mean. Just throwing that out for consideration and thought.
Right. The current agreement is in support of
Is in support
of that idea, and we are, receiving.
Okay. For the time we spend in the hours, especially, because you gotta look at, your hours, your time, your expertise, and that sort of thing
Yes.
in regards to that. Okay, and I'm looking at the bottom line here. I can see now, it's a deviation here. At least it's, I'm trying to read the numbers here. I got
a little
new,
small,
I
isn't it?
know, I got new glasses, but I'm struggling, I can tell you. I think what I'm gonna do is find me a magnifying glass, and I'm gonna bring that with me from, to help out, because, it's bad when you gotta ask somebody to read that for me. You know
So
what I mean?
it's a $700
It's about
change,
seven, yeah, roughly.
from what was approved
Right,
previously to what we're
gotcha.
proposing.
I got you, 700, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so,
good.
I mean, I think, as Dan said, our intention was to maintain a level of expenses that we believe are necessary and appropriate, but pulled back to be able to live within the reduced revenue
Okay,
year-to-date.
okay. Good,
So our hope was
Okay.
that today, the finance committee would take action. I know we can't do that per se,
Sorry.
but that we would put this before the full commission at the April 11th
Yeah,
meeting as
yeah.
the proposed revised budget for the fiscal year.
yeah,
And
yeah,
again, I think this certainly gives, if approved, gives staff the guidance to be able to live within the adjusted means, but
Yeah,
also,
good.
I think the intention is to provide some comfort to the full commission that
yeah.
we're gonna be able to remain on course for the
Yeah,
year.
yeah, I think we can provide the level of comfort that, can go forward. Our not meeting or with a compliment shouldn't hold y'all back from getting going. I mean, you gotta go forward, and I'll have to say this for the full commission with Mr. Chairman there, others, that, hey, we gotta move forward, we gotta take action in spite of. And so, I recommend, I hope they'll give us the ability to do that. Will be my recommendation, that we go forward and not hamper, but enact this so we can make sure we realize this. That's our intention and our goal. Mr. Davis, any suggestions, ideas, sir?
Look, I think he said exactly what I was thinking.
Yes, sir,
He said that.
good. Yeah, we have to go forward, and consider it yay. Consider
Well,
yay.
we'll
Consider
certainly-
yay, if you would, please.
Sure.
Because we want to be responsible physically, and I appreciate the due diligence and the nimble nature that y'all have done this. I appreciate that, because I believe in that very strongly, being nimble and flexing and pivoting as we need to, and I think that's important. So I think y'all have done that well, and I'm glad, I'm comfortable. I'm personally comfortable with that, and I like the idea of, in terms of phasing expenses. Don't spend unless you have to. Some things you don't have to do, and you can phase and you can, defer or whatever, it's always good to do that. And we got stuff coming in 25, let's look forward to 25. Only thing we wanna look at, and I think this keeps us there, is keeping above our fund balance of $1 million. We wanna stay above that, north of that, because we have to show, financial prudence to our customers, our jurisdictions who, and I still remember who funded us way back when we asked them to step up. I never forgot that, and I still remember that. And so we want to continue to show the financial prudence that we can exhibit in regards to that, and in honoring them, those who gave. Because, it wasn't easy to say, or some of the folk, say, hey, some rarely, because I was one who was read this report, but you always have that group, that wants to pull back, and which is good. We want to have people who have differences of opinion, but we want to definitely do that, I think, moving forward. So let's continue to work toward that end, to make sure we stay above if we can, and then look to the future as we can look at what we need to have. But having that as a target, as a goal, was always, I think, important. Is what I would say, and I appreciate it. I appreciate your due diligence in that regard. And of course, moving forward, I think it's a good thing. In regard, anything else y'all like to say in that area in terms of the proposed budgets? So I'm saying yay, from my perspective, and I'll be glad to recommend yay to the full commission and to our chair, in that regard. And of course, I see we have, before I move on to any other comments on the proposed budget amendments, any more comments or suggestions or recommendations? If y'all are okay, I'm okay. We're done with that. And I think we have some good topics on item 5, upcoming scheduled major topics, which is really good. Cash flow management, fund balance policy, we were talking about the $1 million. I think we still need to be, determine where we're going, what's our North Star in that area, budget policies. And of course, anything in particular in that you all like to elaborate on, and budget priorities. What do you think? I know you've mentioned already deferring some things to 25. What are your comments relative to that?
I think our goal generally is to put in place more of a system for how we go about developing, reviewing the budget and amending it each year.
Okay.
I think similar to what we have in the transportation work program, establishing guidelines for what constitutes a substantial amendment versus more of a line-to-line transfer within a bucket of an expense or revenue category. So just being able to be a little bit more explicit about how we can keep that flexibility throughout the year.
They have flexibility.
But keeping the board and the finance committee engaged in the process. So,
Yeah, okay.
I think too, with the likelihood of off-schedule opportunities, I'll put it that way. I think I would expect in fiscal 2025, we will have need to make more adjustments throughout the year because of grant awards that come in that we don't know about in May and June of this spring. And so just being able to have, I think, clear expectations about, as I said, what constitutes an amendment versus what's an administrative adjustment and that type of thing.
I think that's good. And and I always welcome thought. That's why I like having a committee, so you can bat things around. Some of our people, I miss them in a sense. A friend from Hanover.
Well, I think it might be important, Mr. Chairman, that,
yes, sir.
We incorporate a quarterly update on grant status.
I think that's a great idea.
And
I like
it
that.
gives folks some idea of where we're going.
And that would necessitate adjustments, maybe.
Well, that's kind of where I was going.
It
certainly gives empirical data, but then it could necessitate an adjustment.
And we can make that quarterly. As we pivot to that, we can make that change.
Right, quarterly, I mean, that's my thought.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. And my thought also is, I'm not like to micromanage. I like to give flexibility. I like to defer, people that, you all, as you're making decisions, and say, hey, we think this is the best decision. And, we go along with it. We say, okay, we agree. We're heading in the right direction. We're heading north. We're going right. So, I'm inclined to give flexibility in that regard, but quarterly, certainly. And I think as an organization, that will be important for us to recognize that and be able to react more quickly, than just, having to wait and defer things, but to move, and I defer, I don't have a problem deferring, and I hope the commission will feel comfortable in that regard. Cause you're closest to it, we expect y'all to make the call. You make the call, we can work with you.
And grants give us more than just fiscal impact. It kind of, shows we're working on priorities, we're working on,
It gives yeah, thank you. And what it does, that's a great point because it shows, what we're doing now. It gives our update on activity, shows current activity, and then hopefully in the future, opportunities that are before us can be put forth as well. So I'm inclined to give flexibility in that. I don't want to micromanage. I want y'all to sort of say, hey, this is what we're going, organization, and we want to say, okay, yeah, keep going. As we said with this amendment, keep going.
Yeah.
Is what we're saying. But in terms of amounts, I don't like that, say like limited maybe $50,000 or $100,000. I don't think we have to do that. I think we have to do is give you the program, overall flexibility, the program, to say, hey, we're going here, and the quarterly is more than enough there. And, huddle with the executive committee if you have issues of concern. I think that's where the executive committee can kind of like really, take the lead in helping us in that regard versus having just, what was considered a finance committee, I would say it was on me. So, yeah, I'm inclined to extend flexibility. Okay,
Take
in that
into-
regard.
We'll take that into. and
Okay.
Incorporate that into the next month's discussion.
Yeah, and the reason why is because we have to operate in the conditions we're living in. We have to adjust to what we're living with.
absolutely.
And I think we can do that. I know we can do that. So let's do that. And for my recommendation, I appreciate it.
I'll just make one note. So our next finance committee meeting is scheduled for the 16th. So to close the loop on what we were speaking about
April
earlier.
16th, okay.
Our plan will be to provide the March 31 closed financial statements for that committee meeting,
Yeah,
correct?
Correct.
yeah, preliminary,
And
okay.
And then we want to introduce the conversation with regard to fiscal 2025's budget priorities.
Yes.
So that's a helpful conversation for us to have about what means do you expect us to live within? What changes? It's also in years past been helpful for us to know how our member local governments have approached their budgets, because by that time you all are pretty well settled in. And then just because Mr. Holland and I were speaking right before the meeting, I wanted to make sure it's on the record. I believe due to the Chamber's intercity visit, May 2nd is a conflict with the TPO policy board meeting. And so our proposal is to recommend that the TPO move Mr. Davis from the first Thursday to the second Thursday of the month. And that would be in lieu of the currently scheduled commission meeting. That'll enable us to adopt the Unified Planning Work Program for the MPO, which gets, of course, as you know, folded into the agency-wide budget and work program. So it's a pretty critical meeting month for the TPO. So your calendars right now reflect a May 9th commission meeting at, double booked with a finance committee meeting. So I just want to name that and say that I think our recommendation would be that at your April TPO meeting, you take action to move the TPO meetings from May 2nd to May 9th.
Okay,
And then Mr. Davis, at the
Okay.
April commission meeting, we take action to cancel the May commission meeting.
I got you.
It's on the calendar right now.
Conflict with the inner city visit,
Does that make sense?
where most members will be,
The
feel like-
May 9th
May 2nd to May 9th.
PDC meeting.
Yes. So that would allow for the policy board and executive committee, the TPO, to meet on May 9th. No commission meetings.
I've got 5 meetings on there from 8:30. I've got an executive committee meeting, one over at 9211 Forest Avenue.
Do you?
I still have that. I have another PlanRVA commission, one in the Skyline Room, and then another regular executive committee meeting at 9211 Forest Avenue. So, will I be moving all of those, Ms. Shipman?
You could remove all of those from your calendar, yes.
Wow, that'd be great. Hey, put you up, man.
We've really freed up a lot of,
That's relief.
like, tension for that day for you.
9 man days.
Yeah, wow, that's free.
You will not have to phone yourself that day.
Yeah, that's freedom.
But that's sort of the line
I
of
think that,
sight,
yeah, that's,
if that's okay.
yeah, so let me be clear, so Chairman Howland's gonna move TPO, what is it that you like to do with the PDC, cancel the night? So with that, we also need to have a special PDC meeting to elect officers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're gonna have the election very shortly after that for the next FY. I wonder when we can get a group to elect officers and get Miss,
I think if you want, if there's
Dr.
time, we can
Brian.
do it in April or do a special meeting.
yeah, maybe we do it in April, so
That's a
we
good
get Dr.
idea.
Brian,
Yeah. Yeah,
Mr. Atkins,
yeah,
and Miss
Stuart,
Miss Stewart.
yeah,
Stewart, yeah.
great, yeah, good idea.
I have
Great
draft
idea.
agendas for the April commission meeting for your
Okay.
review, so we can
Does that
good.
take
work
a
for
look
you,
at that.
Sal?
That works great,
Yeah,
sir.
then let's do it.
I'm excited. Yeah, thank you.
All right,
Always,
then let's
let's
just do that.
pivot. Yeah, let's pivot as we have to. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Martha, I'm gonna
Bob.
handle all of that at this location.
That sounds good.
That's just a little inside joke. I still have stuff on my calendar, Mr. Holland, where we're sent out, I think it was,
Yeah.
I think it was a number of years ago.
Forest Hill.
All the PDC meetings
Okay.
on the calendar.
Yeah, I heard you say Forest Hill. I
Yeah,
said, really?
I've still got things in my calendar for Forest Hill, like,
Yeah.
but I'm afraid to delete, cause you know, then you get that
Yeah.
question, are you deleting this event, or are you?
All
deleting
events.
Yeah, I'm like,
Leave
wait,
it
what are we doing?
I know the feeling. I understand. Well, yeah, great. Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of moving it up and
Yeah,
getting
that
it done.
works.
Get it out the way, and I think
Sure.
it's great. I think they will appreciate that too. Wonderful. Great job on the May 9th, meeting. Martha, very good.
Okay.
All right, anything else, to share, anything else we'd like to discuss, I should say, so we don't, we're just talking, we're not officially meeting. Anything else, my friends? If nothing else, I think, great, I think let's move forward. And
Okay.
let's go forward, and like I said, y'all keep us on track, and let's continue to be nimble and flexible and pivot, and let's make a difference. All right?
Sounds great.
So
Thank
good
you.
financial prudence, we appreciate y'all working on this.
We appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, you appreciate that. I'm a very flexible guy. I try to be,
Well, we appreciate your leadership.
with everybody, with everybody. Yeah, we're on the going budgets right there in Chesterfield. I was at one last night with Mr. Carroll, and he was, I'm surprised he made it. He was looking rough at that meeting, man. He's pushing himself